I am a spirit,
she continued.
a headless spirit.
Before Kofi could react, Odysseus' head began to fade, disappearing into thin air. In its place was a swirling, dark mist. Kofi stumbled back in shock, his mind racing. Kofi was known far and wide in his village for his good looks and charm. Everywhere he went, people would whisper about his easy smile, smooth voice, and the way he could make any woman swoon. But Kofi wasn't just charming for the sake of it. He had a plan. You see, Kofi made his living by using his charm to get what he wanted, especially from wealthy women. His main goal in life was to live in luxury without having to work hard, and he was very good at it. His mother, Ma Kofi, was a cunning woman. She had raised Kofi to be smart, but not in the way most mothers do. Instead of teaching him to be honest and hardworking, she taught him how to spot a rich woman and how to win her heart. Ma Kofi believed that if Kofi could keep finding richer women to charm, they could both live like royalty. And so far, her plan had worked perfectly. Kofi, my son, Ma Kofi would say, you must always aim higher. Don't waste your time with women who have little to offer. Find the ones who wear gold and live in big houses. Those are the ones who will make us rich. Kofi had listened to his mother's advice for years. He had already charmed several women from nearby villages, taking their money and gifts in exchange for his attention. He had clothes made of the finest fabrics and ate the best food. But Ma Kofi was never satisfied. We can do better, my son. There are richer women out there. Keep your eyes open. Kofi nodded and smiled. He had no problem doing what his mother asked. He enjoyed the attention from the women, and the gifts they gave him made life easy. But little did Kofi know, his mother's greed and his own selfishness would soon lead them down a path filled with danger. One day, while walking through the local market, Kofi saw someone who caught his eye. She was unlike any woman he had ever seen before. Dressed in fine clothes with sparkling jewelry, she carried herself with grace and confidence. The women in the market whispered her name, Odysseus. They said she was new in the village and very wealthy. Kofi's heart raced. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. A woman like Odysseus could give him and his mother everything they ever wanted. He approached her with his most charming smile. "Hello, beautiful lady," Kofi said smoothly. "I couldn't help but notice your grace and beauty. My name is Kofi. What is yours?" Odysseus looked at him, her dark eyes twinkling. "I am Odysseus," she replied, her voice soft but powerful. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Kofi." Kofi wasted no time. He showered Odysseus with compliments, gifts, and attention. He followed her everywhere, making sure she knew how much he admired her. Odysseus seemed to enjoy the attention, and soon enough she began spending more time with him. They would walk through the village together, talking and laughing as if they were already in love. Ma Kofi watched from a distance, her eyes gleaming with pride. "That's my boy," she thought. "Soon we will have everything we've ever dreamed of." But something about Odysseus felt different to Kofi. Though she was kind and beautiful, there was a strange air of mystery around her. Whenever he asked about her past or where she came from, Odysseus would change the subject or laugh it off. Still, Kofi didn't care. As long as she was rich, that was all that mattered to him. Weeks passed, and Kofi felt that the time was right. He decided to ask Odysseus to marry him. After all, marrying her was the ultimate way to secure her wealth. One evening, under the light of the setting sun, Kofi got down on one knee and held out a beautiful ring. "Odysseus," he began, "you are the most beautiful and amazing woman I have ever met. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Odysseus looked down at Kofi, her face unreadable. For a moment, Kofi's heart skipped a beat. What if she said no? What if all his efforts had been for nothing? But then, Adisa smiled and nodded. Yes, Kofi, I will marry you. Kofi's heart leaped with joy. He couldn't believe how easy it had been. Soon all of Adisa's wealth would be his, and he could live the life he had always dreamed of. The wedding was planned for the following week, and the entire village was invited. Kofi wore the finest clothes, and the feast was lavish. Everyone celebrated, dancing and singing late into the night. Adisa's family, who Kofi had never met before, arrived just before the ceremony. They were tall and silent, with eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Kofi thought it was strange, but he brushed it off. After all, Adisa's family must be as rich and mysterious as she was. As the night went on, Kofi began to feel uneasy. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something about the celebration felt off. The air was thick, and the laughter seemed too loud. Kofi, too, seemed unusually quiet, her sharp eyes darting around the room, as if she could sense something was wrong. Just as the night reached its peak, Adisa stood up and clapped her hands. The music stopped, and everyone turned to face her. Kofi smiled, thinking she was about to make a speech about their love. But what she said next sent chills down his spine. "My dear husband," Adisa began, her voice echoing in the silence. "There is something you should know. I am not who you think I am." Kofi's heart pounded. What was she talking about? He looked around the room, but everyone was silent, watching Adisa intently. "I am a spirit," she continued, "a headless spirit." Before Kofi could react, Adisa's head began to fade, disappearing into thin air. In its place was a swirling, dark mist. Kofi stumbled back in shock, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. He had married a monster. As Kofi stood frozen in fear, the villagers began to change. Their faces twisted and contorted, revealing their true forms. Some had sharp fangs, others had glowing eyes, and some were covered in scales. The entire village was filled with supernatural creatures. Adisa stepped toward Kofi, her headless body towering over him. "You thought you could take from me, Kofi," she hissed. "But now it is your turn to pay." Kofi turned to run, but the villagers closed in around him. There was no escape. Kofi, who had been watching from the corner of the room, screamed in terror as the creatures surrounded her. "No, please," she begged. "We didn't know. We didn't know." But the creatures showed no mercy. Just as Kofi had preyed on innocent women, they now preyed on him and his mother. They had been waiting for this moment, and now they would have their revenge. With a burst of adrenaline, Kofi pushed through the crowd of monstrous villagers. Their ghastly hands clawed at him, but he was fast. He ran through the winding village streets. "Come back, Kofi," Adisa's eerie voice echoed, though her lips did not move. It sent a cold shiver down his spine. There is no escape. Suddenly, the ground beneath him disappeared, and he fell, tumbling into what felt like an endless pit. When he finally hit the bottom, everything was silent. "Kofi?" The whisper came. He turned sharply, but saw nothing. His body shivered uncontrollably. He wasn't alone down there. He crawled forward, hoping to find a way out, but instead, his hands touched something cold and hard. Bones. Lots of them. Human bones scattered across the dark floor. Kofi gasped in horror. Had these people tried to escape before him? Terror filled him. Was this to be his fate too? Meanwhile, back at the village, Kofi was living her own nightmare. Surrounded by the monstrous villagers, she tried to plead for her life, but her words fell on deaf ears. The creatures circled her, their sharp teeth glistening in the moonlight. "I didn't know," Makofi cried. "We were only looking for a better life. Your greed brought you here, and now you will pay." Suddenly, Makofi felt a cold hand grab her shoulder. She spun around and screamed. It was Edissa's headless body towering over her. "You taught your son to steal from others, Makofi." Edissa's voice came from the mist. "Now you will understand what it feels like to lose everything." As the creatures closed in, Makofi's scream pierced the night air, echoing across the village. But no one came to help. Meanwhile, Kofi had finally pulled himself out of the pit, but he was still trapped in the village. But Kofi wasn't ready to give up. He needed to know who Edissa truly was. How could someone so beautiful be so terrifying? What kind of creature was she? In a desperate search for answers, he wandered into an old abandoned hut on the edge of the village. In the corner of the room, he found a dusty old book. It was filled with ancient stories about spirits and their powers. As Kofi read through the pages, his hands trembling, he discovered the truth about Edissa. She had once been a woman, just like any other. But many years ago, her heart had been broken by a man who, like Kofi, only wanted her for her wealth. Betrayed and heartbroken, she turned to dark magic. She made a pact with the spirits, offering them her soul in exchange for the power to take revenge on greedy men. But the pact came at a price. Edissa had to remain headless, her beauty forever hidden as punishment for using her charms to deceive others. Kofi's blood ran cold. He was just another victim in her long line of conquests. That night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Kofi made his way to the village center, where Edissa and the other spirits gathered. His hands shook, but he tried to stand tall. "Edissa," he called out, his voice wavering. "I know your secret. I know why you became like this." Edissa's headless figure turned slowly towards him. "You think you can challenge me?" Edissa's voice echoed through the air. "You are nothing but a thief, a liar. You deserve to be here." Kofi took a deep breath. "I am guilty of greed, yes, but you have taken many lives. This village is filled with souls who, like me, were tricked and destroyed. You can end this." For a moment, there was silence. Then, Edissa stepped forward. "Why should I spare you, Kofi? You are no different from the others." "Because," he said, his voice trembling, "you were once human too. You know what it's like to feel betrayed. You don't have to keep doing this." Finally, she spoke. "Perhaps, Kofi, you are right, but your fate is no longer in my hands. The spirits demand payment, and I cannot stop them." Kofi stood frozen. The spirits demanded payment, and there seemed to be no escape. The villagers, now fully transformed into their monstrous forms, watched eagerly, waiting for the moment Kofi would meet his fate. But Kofi wasn't ready to give up just yet. "I will offer you something greater than my soul," Kofi shouted into the night. The spirits went silent, and the air grew still. Even Edissa paused, intrigued. "What could you possibly offer that is worth more than your soul?" she asked. Kofi swallowed hard. "I can find others," he said. "Others like me, men who are greedy and dishonest. I'll bring them here, one by one, and they will be your new victims. Spare me, and I will lead them to you." "We will consider your offer," the spirit growled. "But if you fail to bring us more souls, your fate will be sealed, and you will suffer far worse than death." Kofi nodded. As the spirits faded back into the mist, Kofi felt a wave of relief wash over him. Adisa approached him. "You've made a dangerous deal, Kofi," she said, her voice softer than before. "The spirits won't forget. You can't trick them like you tricked the women who fell for your lies." Kofi met her gaze, his mind racing. "Why do you care? You're the one who brought me here, who revealed your true nature. Why warn me now?" Adisa hesitated, and for the first time since their wedding, Kofi saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "Because I was once like you, Kofi. I thought I could use people, take from them without consequences, but it always catches up to you in the end." Kofi didn't know what to say. Now, faced with the weight of his own betrayal, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: guilt. Kofi spent the next few days wandering the village, trying to come up with a plan. As he walked through the village, he noticed something strange. The villagers, the real ones, were disappearing. One by one, people were vanishing, leaving behind only the monsters who had once been human. Kofi realized that the village itself was a trap, a place where greed and deception led people to their destruction. Adisa found him sitting by the edge of the village one evening, staring out into the mist. "You can't escape, Kofi," she said quietly. "This village is a prison. No one leaves unless the spirits allow it." Kofi clenched his fists. "I won't bring more people here. I won't become like you." Adisa sighed. "Then you will have to face the consequences." But Kofi was determined. He had spent his whole life running from his problems, using his charm to avoid the consequences of his actions. But now he had no choice. He had to fight. The next night, Kofi stood in the center of the village, waiting for the spirits to appear. The mist swirled around him, thick and oppressive, her face pale with fear. "They're coming," she whispered, clutching his arm. Kofi took a deep breath. He had no idea if his plan would work, but he had to try. He had to fight for life. "You have come to fulfill your promise," the largest spirit growled, its voice deep and menacing. "I won't bring you more souls," he said firmly, "but I will offer you something else." The spirits hissed, their ghostly forms shifting restlessly. "You dare defy us?" Kofi swallowed hard. "I offered you myself. I offer my soul in exchange for Adisa's freedom," Kofi continued. "Let her go, and take me instead." The spirits fell silent, their eyes glowing brighter as they considered his offer. Finally, the largest spirit spoke. "You would sacrifice yourself for her?" Kofi nodded, his heart heavy. "Yes. Your sacrifice is accepted, Kofi. But know this, you will belong to us forever." As the last of the spirits vanished, Kofi felt a strange calm wash over him. He had done it. He had saved Adisa. Adisa fell to her knees, sobbing. "Kofi, my husband, why?" Kofi knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Because it's time I faced the consequences of my actions." And with that, the mist swallowed him whole, leaving Adisa alone in the now empty village. What do you think about the story? Who was on fault? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.